Putin's unprovoked invasion of Ukraine has now lasted more than 4 years. You can debate his pre-war expectations. Did he intend to capture Kyiv within 3 days? Or did he plan to defeat the Ukrainian army within weeks? But it does not matter now, because no sane man would go on to claim that Putin's intention was to get bogged down in Ukraine for 4 years. The remarkable thing is that Ukraine keeps standing against a much bigger enemy, and despite all the difficulties, they attack and liberate land whenever the opportunity arises. Welcome to another update on the war in Ukraine. This video is sponsored by you. Unfortunately, the YouTube environment is not great right now, with the algorithm being friendlier to drama and react channels, and YouTube being permissive of AI slop. We don't do drama and we don't do AI. But thanks to our members and patrons, our channel continues to make 3 public videos per week, with the team intact and going strong. In recognition of their generosity and contributions, members and patrons receive 2 additional exclusive videos each week, and access many other perks. Join them to watch more than 250 exclusive videos covering every era of history by pressing the join button under the video or the links in the description and pinned comment. Early in the war, we noted the Russian army's communication difficulties in Ukraine. At some point, the Russians started using Elon Musk's Starlink satellite terminals to gain access to the internet, to establish communication within and across units. Most recently, Ukrainian officials claimed that Russia's drone operators use Starlinks to extend the range of their strike drones. And Ukraine's newly appointed Minister of Defense, Mikhailo Fedorov, praised by commentators for his efficiency and competency for his previous endeavors, appealed to Elon Musk to solve this issue. To his credit, Musk, despite not being exactly known for his sympathies for Ukraine, decided to disable all unauthorized Starlink terminals in Ukraine, almost 550,000 terminals. As a result, while the Ukrainian military, which also relies on Starlink for its communications, was able to register its terminals to continue using them, Russian units suddenly lost their communications and saw a decrease in the effectiveness of their drones. This has been causing challenges for the Russian army in Ukraine, and the Ukrainian army has been trying to capitalize on the situation in February. In our previous videos, we have discussed the new infiltration tactics used by the Russian army. In a nutshell, at this point of the war, Ukraine does not have continuous, uninterrupted defensive lines, with infantry manning trenches throughout the front line. Proliferation of drones on both sides has made this impossible, since drones can easily detect the gathering of infantry and take them out. On top of that, Ukraine still has manpower shortages, which prevents them from deploying more troops to its forward defensive lines. As a result, Ukraine now defends by deploying troops to a well-fortified network of drone-resistant strongholds in tactically significant areas and choke points, and uses its drones 24/7 to detect enemy movement. Detecting approaching vehicles is much easier than detecting small groups of infantry, sometimes as few as 2 people. Hence, in recent months, Russia has been increasingly using the tactic of infiltrating the Ukrainian rear in small infantry groups. On the one hand, many Russians are killed in these attempts, but on the other hand, sometimes poor visibility caused by foggy or rainy weather makes it difficult for drone operators to detect the enemy movement, which allows the infiltrators to advance undetected. Then they hide, waiting for more infiltrators to join them, along with trying to detect Ukrainian artillery and drone operator positions. In both cases, good communication is paramount for the success of the mission. The disabling of Starlinks have made secure communication between infiltrators and the main Russian force very difficult. On top of that, often these small groups raise the Russian flag in the areas they have infiltrated and film this process to create an illusion that Russia has captured another village or town. This has made the life of OSINT mappers more difficult. Such areas are often depicted as grey or Russian-controlled. After capturing Hulaypola and in general achieving relatively quick progress at the junction of Dnipropetrovsk and Zaporizhzhia oblasts, Ukraine's situation in this sector seemed particularly problematic. However, it turns out that much of the area north of Hulaypola was only sparsely manned by Russian troops, and Russian difficulties with communication allowed Ukraine to regain a significant portion of this sparsely defended territory, on a line roughly from Dobropilya to Novoselivka in February. On February 5th, the Ukrainian army launched several localized counterattacks, making quick progress. The first and largest counterattack appears to have occurred south of the river Vovcha, quickly liberating several villages, including Oleksivka, Sosnivka, and Vovcha, and then continuing southward to clear all Russian forces all the way to Stepkova and Ternova, crossing the tributary of the Yancha River. Another axis of their counterattack has reached Kalinivska. In the southwest of this sector, the Ukrainians have cleared the area around Vishneva and Verbove. The Ukrainians have also managed to stabilize the left flank of Orikhiv, the presumed next target of Russia in this area, pushing back the Russian units from the axis around Tonevata and Dobropilya. Simultaneously, the Ukrainian army has pushed the Russians back around Stepnogorsk, clearing their presence south of the river Konka. This is particularly important, since Russian progress in this sector would threaten the city of Zaporizhzhia. From the beginning of these operations, the Ukrainian command and sources were careful not to create outsized expectations. They do not call this a counteroffensive, but clearing operations. And it seems like a correct designation of what has been going on in Zaporizhzhia and Dnipropetrovsk oblasts. The Ukrainians have made several opportunistic strikes, taking advantage of Russia's communication problems, and have cleared dozens of lightly manned villages and locales. Zelensky has claimed that Ukraine has liberated 400 square kilometers through these counterattacks. At the very least, this will force the Russian command to deploy more troops to these areas, weakening their other groupings. Zaporizhzhia is one of the presumed targets of the next Russian offensive, so pushing them back and further away from the city of Zaporizhzhia and other important areas like Orikhiv gives the Ukrainian defense a bit more breathing space. All in all, these counterattacks do not change the strategic outlook of the war, but it is a welcome development for Ukraine and an important morale booster. Not much has changed elsewhere on the battlefield. In the Pokrovsk sector, the Russians continue to hold the initiative and make further progress in and around Freshina and Rodinska. In the Kostiantynivka sector, they have reached Ilanivka. It looks like very soon the battle for Kostiantynivka proper, the southern tip of the Donbas fortress belt, will start. They are also making progress towards Slovyansk from several axes. The Russians have captured most of Privilia, Fedorivka Druha and Nikifovica, continuing their progress along the MO3 highway. Further north, after capturing the strongly fortified territory in Siversk, the Russian army is slowly moving westwards, having reached Krivoluka in February. They have also practically captured Yampil, making progress in their pincer movement on Liman. This is part of the effort to reach Slovyansk and start the battle for the Donbas fortress belt from the north. Russia also continued making cross-border incursions to capture lightly defended and strategically insignificant border areas. The goal here is to capture as much border area as possible, following Putin's order to create a so-called buffer zone on the Russo-Ukrainian border. After a brief long-range strike ceasefire, Russia continued launching massive combined packages of drones and missiles on Ukrainian cities, primarily targeting Ukraine's energy infrastructure. They did so at least 5 times in February, but despite being heavily damaged, it looks like Ukraine's power grid has managed to survive another winter of Russian long-range strikes. Improving the weather will reduce pressure on Ukraine's power grid to some extent. According to the Ukrainian military official Yuri Ilnat, since the start of the war, Russia has launched 13,000 missiles, 88,000 drones, and 120,000 KAB glide bombs on Ukraine, a truly astonishing number. Even more amazing is that Ukraine has been able to withstand this onslaught. They are still looking for ways to further improve the efficiency and capability of their air defense. Of course, Ukraine's ability to defend itself still depends on military aid from its Western allies. But as the war has progressed, Kyiv has done a good job of decreasing this reliance. The advisor of Ukraine's defense minister, Hanna Gvozdia, claimed that Ukraine now manufactures $50 billion worth of military production, which is a 50-fold increase since the start of the war. European states and their military producers have done an important job of supporting Ukraine's domestic production, both in terms of financing and through joint manufacturing. But Ukraine still fully depends on Western countries for advanced weapons and equipment, particularly air defense. In February, Ukraine's defense minister Fedorov stated that Western allies have pledged to allocate $38 billion on drones, air defense, artillery, and other military aid in 2026. On February 11th and 12th, the British Defence Minister Healey announced an aid package worth £540 million, 150 million of which will be spent on the purchase of weapons from the United States. The rest will be allocated for the production of 1,000 lightweight multi-role missiles to use against Russian long-range strikes. On February 13th, Norway announced a deal with France that allocated more than €600 million for the production of French-made AASM hammer-guided aerial bombs. On the same day, the Swedish Defence Minister Johnson stated that the EU will provide a €90 billion loan to Ukraine for the purchase of Gripen fighter jets and air defence systems from Sweden. Stockholm has also pledged a €1.2 billion military aid package, which includes Trident Mark II anti-aircraft and anti-drone artillery guns, grenade launchers, artillery shells, and money for the domestic production of drones and missiles in Ukraine. On February 24th, Lithuania pledged 30 RBS-70 Manpads missiles, while Canada stated that it will allocate about $1.4 billion for military aid to Ukraine in 2026 and 2027. They have promised to send 400 armored vehicles, 66 armored personnel carriers, and 383 Senator armored cars. Ukraine will need more of this if the war continues for a long time, and not much from the ongoing talks indicates an imminent ceasefire or an end to the war. There were several bilateral and trilateral meetings involving the warring sides and the United States in February, and there were nice declarations about hard work, constructive talks, and progress. But the fate of Donbas and security guarantees for Ukraine, which involve the deployment of European troops, remain the main points of dispute. On the surface, nothing indicates that Russia is going to budge from its demand that Ukraine surrender Donbas to it without a fight, and its uncompromising position on foreign troops. Therefore, the most likely outcome here is that Russia continues to mimic diplomatic activity while ramping up pressure on the battlefield. But then, on February 28th, a member of Ukraine's negotiation team, the former chief of military intelligence and the current chief of staff to the president, Kirilo Budanov, stated in an interview with the media that Russia had accepted security guarantees from the United States for Ukraine. If this is true, then we can talk about a breakthrough in negotiations, but there has been no further confirmation of this news as of March 1st. According to the Financial Times, the American security guarantee plan agreed upon between the US, Europe, and Ukraine envisages the US joining the war against Russia in 72 hours if Russia attacks Ukraine once again. For now, the Trump administration is trying to pressure Russia into negotiations and decrease its maximalist demands by diminishing Putin's war chest. After pressuring the Indian Prime Minister Modi, the latter agreed to stop buying Russian oil, switching to the US and Venezuelan oil instead, according to Trump. And Reuters confirmed that Indian refiners have at least temporarily stopped buying the Russian crude. Whether that will become a long-term policy for India or just a short-term measure to appease Trump remains unknown. But it is another blow to the struggling Russian economy. To summarize, in February, at the 4th-year anniversary of this horrific war, Ukraine has managed to stabilize the situation on the battlefield and regain some territory, taking advantage of Russian troubles with communication. But the general picture remains unchanged. Russia still holds the strategic initiative and will continue attacking, hoping that the Ukrainian defenses will crumble sooner or later. The same unfulfilled hope in the 4th year of the war. Let's conclude by looking at visually confirmed equipment losses suffered by both sides as of March 1st, according to the Oryx blog. Russia has lost at least 4,346 tanks, 10,686 vehicles, 315 command posts and communication stations, 2,276 artillery systems and vehicles, 181 aircraft, and 168 helicopters. Ukraine has lost at least 1,391 tanks, 6,061 vehicles, 87 command posts and communication stations, 1,191 artillery systems and vehicles, 113 aircraft, and 55 helicopters. Further updates on the Russian invasion of Ukraine are on the way. If you don't want to miss them, make sure you are subscribed and have pressed the bell button to see them. Please consider liking, subscribing, commenting, and sharing, it helps immensely. Our patrons and YouTube members can watch more than 200 exclusive videos. Join their ranks via the link in the description or by pressing the join button under the video to watch these weekly videos, learn about our schedule, get early access to our videos, access our private Discord, and much more. This is the Kings and Generals channel, and we will catch you on the next one.